Some say it's impossible to get married in Germany as a foreigner, and honestly, I get why they say that. The bureaucracy can really feel overwhelming. Endless appointments, translations, and documents. But here's the thing, I'm a foreigner, I'm queered, and I got married in Germany. Now this process wasn't easy, but 100% doable. The issue most foreigners face comes by not being able to get access to one crucial document, and that is a correct and recent birth certificate. If you can't get this from your home country, then it becomes tricky to get married in Germany. However, that doesn't mean that you're out of options. There are other countries where the requirements are not as strict as in Germany that you can get married in. In this video, we will cover who can marry whom in Germany, where can you get married, what is the process and requirements of getting married in Germany, what are the costs, what is our timeline and experience, and we will mention alternative countries to get married in if that is an option that you want to consider. Hey, my name is Jen and I'm from Guatemala.
And mine is Yvonne and I'm German.
And together we're from simplegermany.com, where we create English content to empower internationals to settle into life in Germany more smoothly. Now, one big question is who can marry whom in Germany?
Pretty much anyone can marry anyone in Germany as long as these following requirements are met. Both partners need to be at least 18 years of age. Both partners cannot already be married. Both partners need to be able to freely express their will to get married, so they need to have the legal capacity. And both partners cannot be related to each other. Now, why am I always saying both partners? Because same-sex marriage has been legal as a marriage per se since 2017, before it was a civil union. We had both, first civil union, then marriage. We will talk about that later. And yes, of course you can marry each other in Germany if both of you are foreigners.
Now, where can you get married in Germany? There are 4 options that you can choose from. First, you have the standard option, and that is to go to the Standesamt, it's called, which is like the city registration office for marriage.
Like the registrar.
Registrar. And that is the baseline. So every city has a Standesamt where they conduct ceremonies of marriage.
Number 2 is still with the Standesamt, but in one of their more romantic, fancier locations. For example, here in Düsseldorf, you have, I think, 20 locations to choose from that are officially part of the Standesamt. Of course, you need to pay an extra fee for those. Some are at castles, others are in other neighborhoods that are a bit more historic and pretty. The choice is yours.
Yes, and why would you choose to do that? That's because depending on the Standesamt is really just a building that has a room. There's nothing really special or romantic about it. There are some Standesamt in Germany that are more romantic because just the building is a little bit older and it's a little bit more decorated, one can say. And that is why some people opt to go to one of these locations.
Other than that, this is really more the legal matter of getting married and not the romantic celebration matter. Mm-hmm. Which leads to number 3.
And that is to get married in the church. Now, here's a few disclaimers for church. Number 1 is that you can only get married in church if you're an active member of the church, aka you're paying your church tax. That's how you're an active member in Germany for the church. And in the church, it's not a legal marriage that is happening there. Actually, it's just a ceremony. So usually what couples do is that first they get married at the Standesamt, just to have a short ceremony, which is a legal one. And then they have a more romantic or bigger ceremony at church if you're an active member.
And number 4 is to actually get married in a different city in Germany than you live in. So the process is the following. You will always need to register your desire to get married in the city that you live in, with the Standesamt where you live. But then you can go to any other city in Germany and talk to the Standesamt there and say, hey, we want to get married at your place. Here is our registration, and get the official documents from the city you live in, and then pretty much you go on with the process. For example, we had friends who live in Düsseldorf, but they wanted to get married in northern Germany where they come from, and they went through that process.
Now let's talk about the process and requirements. So you have to, of course, go through different steps. Step number 1 is to have a consultation with your city registrar or the Standesamt. When should you do this? Roughly 8 to 10 months before your desired date to get married. Now, you can do this in 2 ways. You can go personally to the Standesamt and actually ask for a consultation there. Or nowadays, a lot of the Standesamts actually have a formular, formular is in German, a form in German that you can fill out, and then they will let you know what documents are required for you to get married. This is the purpose of this consultation, is to figure out the list of documents that your Standesamt requires for you to legally marry someone else in Germany.
Especially important if one or both of you are foreigners, because those documents vary highly depending on your nationality.
Yes, and we chose to do a personal consultation just because...
We chose back in the day, there was no online yet for Düsseldorf, so we had to go personally.
Fair point.
Which, yeah, but nowadays you can also do it online. Actually, that's the preferred method.
The online method?
Yeah.
However, what we found a pro of the personal consultation is that there you have directly someone that you can ask questions, and in case you get your documents, the requirement of your documents and you have questions, you can ask directly. And of course, every Standesamt in Germany has a different process, so just be sure to check your local Standesamt to figure out what process is the right one for you. You can simply Google for heiraten and the name of your city, and most likely the second, third, or first Google result will be the one for your Standesamt.
Yeah, or I would Google for Standesamt and the name of your city.
That's actually a lot quicker, yes.
Yes. And also, while you're doing that, you can check directly what is the timeline of your Standesamt in terms of appointments availability. For example, in Düsseldorf, the appointments to get married only get activated in their booking calendar 6 months in advance. Other cities have 18 months in advance. And of course, those restrictions impact your timeline directly.
Now, step number 2 is the funnest of them all, and that is to gather your documents and translations. Now, you would have this list of the Standesamt with all the required documents, and here's the baseline of documents that almost everyone needs to provide. Document number 1 is your ID or passport. In German, this could also be your personal Ausweis if you're German, and if you're not, most likely is your passport.
Second document is a registration confirmation that you are registered in the city that you're living in. This is like an excerpt from the Bürgeramt. The pro here in our case, or with I think most cities, is that if you get married at the Standesamt in the city that you're registered in, they do that automatically for free because they have access to their systems.
Next document that will most likely be asked is for a certificate of no impediment of marriage. This is pretty much a document that says that you are single
and are qualified to get married. In German, this is actually called Ehefähigkeitszeugnis.
And also super interesting is that as a foreigner, this document needs to come from your home country.
To prove that you haven't been married, or to prove that you're not currently married to someone else in your home country. The next document is often the big stumbling block, and that is the birth certificate. And here it's not enough to have your original birth certificate that was issued when you were born, but they want an excerpt or like a copy of your birth certificate that is not older than 6 months. So you need to be able in your home country to access and be able to get a copy from whichever institution is in charge of that. And depending where you're from, you might not be able to get that.
We know from experience from a lot of foreigners that face one of 2 issues. Number 1 is that their birth certificate has errors in it, and actually they cannot correct them because they've never actually used their birth certificate for any process in their life, so they never took care of it, and it's just too complicated to get it corrected and do all that. And number 2 is that some countries don't issue new documents, or it's really, really complicated to get one. And this is, like you mentioned, one of the stumbling blocks, but we have alternatives for you at the end of the video if you face these issues.
If you are divorced, widowed, have children, or are actually naturalized German citizen, they will also ask for respective documents to kind of like prove all of that, and especially divorced or widowed to prove that you are, again, available to get married.
And another important thing to point out is that if you get documents from your home country, these documents need to either be legalized or be certified with an apostille. I hope I said that correctly. And they need to be imported or sent to Germany. And within Germany, you need to get an official certified translation from a sworn German translator, or a sworn translator in Germany that can translate your language to German. Now, to make this so much easier, there's a service provider called LingoKing, which is fantastic. It's all digital. It's in English. You upload your documents.
Super fast.
In a matter of a few days, you can have your certified translation in your mailbox that you can then present to the Standesamt. If you want more information about LingoKing, you can check out the link in the description box below.
Step number 3 in this process is once you have all your documents ready, you can go ahead and book your desired wedding appointment, your date, your wedding date. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this highly depends on how far ahead your city opens their calendar. Some, like I said, is 6, others is 18 months. So check with your city, and then it's up to you to select the date that you'd like. If you're super picky, then this might be more complicated. If you're free-flowing, then you probably have more choice.
To have a little bit of a context, the wedding season in Germany is between May and October, and Fridays and Saturdays are usually the busiest ones that everyone wants to get married on a Friday or a Saturday.
So there you literally need to be in the calendar on the day that those dates get activated, 6 months or whatever time period in advance, and be like, mine.
And again, please refer to your local Standesamt to actually understand how this works because everyone works differently. Now going to step number 4, and this is, I would say, the funnest part, and this is actually to get married, and that is to show up to your appointment to get married. Now, Germans are always super punctual, and this is a day where you have to be super punctual. Don't be that bride that, it's 15 minutes late because then your appointment is over.
Because usually they have 15-minute slots and they're literally back to back to back to back to back.
Exactly. So you have to be on time. And this leads to the second thing, that the marriage ceremony usually lasts for 15 minutes and you have a person that reads out kind of like the contract, so to speak, and then they ask you questions, asking you, do you want to accept this person? The traditional stuff. If you don't speak German fluent yet, you can book a translator, of course, at an extra cost. And yeah, that's the day that you get married.
This ceremony is, again, the legal ceremony, and typically in Germany is accompanied by the closest family and friends only. Also, these rooms only allow, depending on the room, up to 10 or 15 people. And then oftentimes what happens is that more extended friends or family or members of a Verein, depending on how your life is structured, welcome you outside the building, and that's when you throw the rose pebbles, throw the rice or whatsoever. But that is absolutely not a necessity. It's all up to what you would like it to be.
Yes, and also traditionally speaking, it is also not mandatory, but you can choose to have for each one of the spouses a witness, and in German it's called
Trauzeuge.
And they are also part of the ceremony at the front, and they also just sign as witnesses that they were there to witness the marriage.
One super crucial thing is that both spouses, and if you choose to have witnesses, need to bring your ID to the wedding date, because your identification will get checked and verified that you are who you're claiming to be.
Yes. Now, let's talk about the costs. Now, of course, every wedding in every city charges a little bit different. However, this is a baseline to have an estimation of how much thing costs or how much a marriage costs in Germany. So to provide these costs, we actually look to the city that we live in, and that is Düsseldorf. And in 2025, this is how much it would cost to get married without including translations and actually extra costs for your home country for the documents.
No, these are just the pure bureaucratic costs of the Standesamt.
Yes, so here we go. Now, the assessment of marriage under foreign law, which is pretty much checking your documents and giving you the green light to get married in Germany, costs 100 euros.
If you would like to get married on a Saturday, for example, it's an extra 150 euros. So this is optional.
Now, for a marriage certificate, you will need to pay 15 euros. And if you want an international marriage certificate, it's another 15 euros. This puts a total of getting married on Saturday and all the shenanigans at 280 euros.
Which, again, 150 of that are optional because you don't have to get married on a Saturday. Now, we got married in 2017, and our total costs, including translations and all the bureaucratic paperwork, and including a wedding on Saturday, was 350 euros at that time. Now, mind you, the costs have risen slightly, but not tremendously. I think the assessment for us was 70 euros, now it's 100 euros, so just to give you context.
Now, to give you a real example of a foreigner and a German that got married in Germany, here's a quick overview of our timeline and experience.
So we pretty much worked in 2 6-month timeframes. Why? Because Düsseldorf opens the calendar 6 months in advance. We wanted a Saturday wedding in summer, so we knew, in February we need to make that appointment, and we wanted to allow at least 6 months before that to collect all of our documents. That means we started 1 year before we want to get married.
So in August of 2016, we made an appointment with the Standesamt, got a list of the documents that were required, and then we had 6 months to collect those documents. Now, I am from Guatemala, and I did not travel to Guatemala to get my documents. However, I gave a power of attorney to a friend, and they were able to do all that, to gain all those documents in Guatemala, which was the certificate of no impediment of marriage, if I said it correctly, and my birth certificate. Then they needed to legalize these documents, and then they sent them to me through DHL, and here I translated the documents, and then we got your documents, which were super easy to obtain. And that allowed us in February of 2017 to go back to the Standesamt with our documents, and we were ready to make that appointment, which we got.
Yes, we got our desired date and time for August 2017.
As promised, here is the list of alternative countries that you can get married in and when it makes sense.
It makes sense to look at alternatives to marry somewhere else if you are under time pressure, like if you have time constraint for whatever reason. Because depending on when you decide to get married, there might not be appointments available for the next month if you're hitting wedding season in Germany. In winter, it might be a little bit more flexible, but we know from other countries it could be a lot faster to get married there.
Yes, like we mentioned, our bureaucratic process took a whole year. So if you don't want to wait so much, then obviously Germany might not be the right option for you. Second thing is, as we have mentioned over and over again in this video, is that if you have issues gaining or getting your birth certificate. In these cases, then there are two most popular actually countries that you can get married in depending of where you are in your trajectory to Germany. Number one is the US. Actually, the USA is very easy to get married there. Look, like example, Vegas. And number two is actually Denmark. It's a super popular option to get married there as well. Here are two examples of couples who went to either one of those routes. We have a queer Dominican Republican couple who actually traveled to the US and got married there because in the Dominican Republic, same-sex marriage is not allowed. So then they got their certificate in the US to then come as a married couple to Germany. And that was super smart. And I guess because you live in the Dominican Republic, it's super fast to travel to the US.
And we know another couple from Russia who decided to get married in Denmark to avoid the conundrum of having to get in contact with their government in asking for their newly printed birth certificates. So Denmark for them, which not necessarily asked for a birth certificate, was the easy option.
Yes, and to emphasize, according to the research that we've done, both USA and Denmark, at least at the time of recording, they don't require your birth certificate. So that is a massive bureaucratic step that you save if you want to proceed to get married in one of those countries. I did research on how to get married in Denmark, and to be honest, it's still somewhat bureaucratic, even though some of the processes are fully online. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's also cheaper than getting married in Germany, because you also need to consider that you need to travel to Denmark, you need your hotel and travel expenses as well. And those are in Danish crowns, if I say that correctly, which is a lot more usually than euros.
Yeah, and also the assessment of your documents is more expensive than in Germany. So Denmark often gets proclaimed as this haven for marriage, which again, depending on where you come from, it's true. But if you, like Jen, have access and no time pressure, have access to your birth certificate and no time pressure, getting married in Germany is actually smooth and more convenient.
If you want more information on how to get married in Denmark, then you can check out the Danish's governmental website, which we link in the description box below. I hope I said that correctly. And if you do decide to proceed to get married in Germany, then you can check out our video here on the left about how to translate documents successfully in Germany. Until next time, cheers! Are available for you as an alternative if getting married I liked back in the day when for the requirements you had your sheet and we wrote them down. That'd be cool for these requirements. Danke schön.